your town. Funding has been quite limited for people in my position, where like 98% of my business is done outside of Sweden, as far as booking my bands and trying to do European tours or festivals. So right now, basically what the government has done is made funding available for companies in this line of work where you've had Swedish shows canceled before May 31st, which basically does me zero good, because even though I'm based in Sweden, I only had 3 shows booked total, and they all happened after May 31st. So it's been pretty rough working with live music right now. I tried a couple of live streams over the weekend, but also that's not helping much because it's a huge investment in those. Roughly 4,000 euros a piece to do, and you're just counting on donations. So I haven't heard if like Way Out West is canceled, for example, which I also normally work as backstage manager. But I would guess that it will be, even though that's in mid-August. So great to hear about Denmark, though, with 500 people happening August 1st.
We hope so, definitely. Thank you, Erin. Thank you very much for the brief update.
Yep.
An update from Finland, Taro, from Tullikamari. Is that correct, Taro?
Yes. Hello. I'm Tero from Finland, Tullikamari. So actually, we just got announcement from the government about an hour ago. So far, we've been basically locked down with everything, all the pubs, restaurants closed. Our venue we closed it in mid-March, and now they announced that from the 1st of June, they will let restaurants open with a 50% capacity, and terraces, open space terraces will be 100% capacity. The information from different officials been a little bit, how would I say it, not clear, because for instance, our case is that we have a restaurant with a club with a 450 capacity. We have a bigger hall with 1,200 capacity, and we have a nightclub. Now there is still the restriction that all the events, all big gatherings, public events are still prohibited till the end of July. We still do not know what will happen in August regarding concerts and everything. And now they said that these restrictions are valid till the end of October, but they continue to follow the situation, and they might loosen up, they might tighten up the restrictions as we go.
Okay.
And funding, so far we haven't received anything basically, but that's a long story. I can go into that later on. And what we are doing now is we are organizing a 2-day live stream festival in June, 12th and 13th of June, with 10 Finnish artists. The budget is around 100,000 euros. We are totally dependable on donations. So far we got, I don't know, maybe 10K of sponsorship. So there is a big way to go, but we hope that people want to support us. That's about it.
Thank you, Taro. Thank you for the update for Finland.
Oh, by the way, stayalive.fi. Stayalive.fi. Thank you.
Great. And that's the festival, the showcase festival. Let's go to Russia. Dmitry Apple from Attack Concerts. Are you there, Dmitry?
Yes. Hi.
Hello. Hi. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Thank you. I think our situation right now in Russia is more complicated than in other European countries, because unfortunately right now Russia is on the 2nd place in number of corona cases in the world. And official media says that the spread of the infection has already slowed. But anyway, when other European countries are making decision for quarantine easing, in Russia right now it's impossible, because every day Russia still registers about 10,000 new corona cases every day. So I think at least we're behind at least 1 month other European countries, and nobody knows when live shows, big gatherings will be back. It's impossible to say it right now. It's too early to talk about this in Russia. So it looks like this, but anyway, we remain optimistic, look forward, and hope everything will be fine, and we will have opportunity at least to understand when our industry will be live again, to make some plans in the future.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Dimitri, from the update. We also should have Boyan here from Bulgaria.
Hello. Hi.
Hi,
Right
there you go. Oh, that's the guitars. Yeah, now I see them. Great, great. From Sofia Music Enterprise, right? The Jam?
Uh,
Jam Club, right?
no, actually, I no longer work with them.
Oh, okay.
I have my own thing going on.
Oh,
It's quite all right. Yeah, it's a small country, but there's a lot of restructuring.
yeah.
Yeah, it's good to see everyone. Good afternoon. The Bulgaria hasn't been one of the hardest hit countries, but that doesn't mean that people are out and about spending a lot of money. We had our lockdown in March 13, so that was more than 2 months ago. Local government came down hard on absolutely anything, so they took no chances. And essentially that wiped out anything that we had planned until the end of summer. They recently allowed bars and restaurants to be open, but only outdoors, and of course with proper social distancing measures, which are very difficult to police, especially in a country like Bulgaria where people are incredibly social. They just like to be out. In terms of events, big festivals have been postponed until next year. Those that rely on big international touring acts. We were supposed to have a Slipknot headline festival. That's not happening. And I know some people here, I know they have business in Sofia. They know about their own postponements. Our events, we managed to move them. I primarily do booking. We managed to move them to September and October. Fingers crossed that that will happen in some way. We are a little bit worried if those social distancing measures are brought indoors as well, because an indoor, any kind of indoor venue here, even the arena at 30% capacity, doesn't really make sense to us financially. Besides that, no real support from the local government for the industry. They are going to support some low-earning musicians and artists in the theater, crafts, anything. Salaries here are really small, but the people will be able to survive at least for 3 or 4 months with that cash. And we're simply looking forward to seeing how things develop. So far, we have about 30 to 40 cases a day. Not a big caseload, especially compared to what Dimitri was saying in Russia. The measures will be lifted in September if all goes well. It might be sooner if the cases remain low. And that's pretty much it for the moment. We're just keeping our heads down and hoping for the best.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Boyan. Thanks a lot for the update.
Thank you.
One final one, because he got up so early, is to go to Mark from the US. I know it's very early over there, Mark. But can you give us an update on the situation in the US, please?
We're kind of like Russia in a way still. We are closed, essentially. And I was on the call listening to Rapinoe's, basically that bruising live second quarter report that he put out. And there's obviously not going to be any shows in America, major shows whatsoever this summer, and probably into the fall. And now they're, I don't think we're going to see anything except maybe on a small club level begin until 2021. And I've heard all kinds of rumors from people, major people, saying that it may even be late in 2021, and a lot of the bigger tours going in 2022. in America, there's not one rule that applies to all the states. So certain states are opening up at different times. I'm sure you've seen this on the news. So, you know, there was a club, for instance, in Arkansas that was going to open, and they pulled their liquor license. They said, if you do a show, I think it was like a 500 seat club or something. If you do a show, and they said, well, we're going to do it. So they pulled the license. So they backed down. There's that kind of, you know, push back and forth going on over here with states that are trying to reopen. And there's like all kinds of crazy stuff happening over here too, like the Dropkick Murphys. They're going to play Boston's, you know, the famed Fenway Park. And they're going to be doing a show on the field, no fans, live broadcast. There's, you know, there's all kinds of things happening with drive-in theater shows that they're trying to do. But, you know, these are small. They're not going to really make a dent in what's happening. So, you know, and our cases in America are still up in the 2,000, little less than that sometimes, a little higher than that some days. So it's not like it's really fallen off that greatly. So there's not much to say over here because we're essentially closed.
Seems like a lot of things happens with the agencies though, right? Just
there's a lot going on with the agencies right now.
Zimmerman has left William Morris as well and stuff like that. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there's going to be big changes in that. Maybe we'll save that for another meeting.
Yeah,
but I'm
sure.
hearing from a lot of people on the inside that there's a lot of people breaking off from the major agencies, and you know, the verdict's still out on that. But I think there's a lot of people that are frustrated with their situations, and
Gosh.
yeah.
Great. Okay. Thanks for all the updates. And now we should move over to the today's topic. And just before I give the microphone to Ivana, our moderator, I'll just say a few practical things. I've said it before, but you probably already know how to use Zoom. But if you don't, there's a few guidelines talking about muting your microphones while you're not speaking, so we can't hear you shouting at the wives or your husbands or whoever you shout at. At the end of the panel, which we have planned to take about 45 minutes, is also open for some questions later on. And it's as I said, it's always nice to see. We try to do something about the social part of it as well during these panels. So if you feel like it, then definitely turn your cameras on. It's always nice to see people. So I think I'll leave it to Ivana to take over from here and to talk about insurance. So have a coffee or beer, whatever you want to, and then I'll give it over to you, Ivana, to take it from here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ronnie. Hi, everyone. Great to see you. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for setting up this panel. Thanks VIP team, and thanks for inviting me again to be the host this time again. And yes, I see many faces that have joined this panel again, so many faces from the last time. And yeah, great to see you. And as Ronnie said, we're just trying to keep the panel part shorter because there was a need the last time for a talk between all of you because it's a social part. So we'll try to show you a brief overview and show you how the topic and the issue about the insurance look like. So let me start with the introduction of our guests today. We have three panelists. The first one is Michael Kill. Hello, Michael.
Hi there. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, Michael is the Chief Executive of the Nighttime Industries Association from the UK. And he has a vast knowledge across in the nighttime economy business sector. And yeah, Michael was also fundamental to the rollout of the national music event strategy for the largest late night entertainment multi-venue operator in Europe. So great to have you here on this panel. Thanks for coming. Yeah, the second one is Martin Goebbels from, yeah, he's the head of music and touring at Miller Insurance, also from the United Kingdom. Hello, Martin. Great to have you here. Yeah, With over 40 years experience in specialist music insurance, Martin is the leading figure in the industry and arguably one of the most knowledgeable and connected brokers in the business. Martin has won numerous awards over the years, including winner of the Unsung Hero Award at the Live UK Music Awards, and 3 times winner of the industry's most professional at the International Live Music Conference. So, hi, Martin.
Hello, thank you.
You're welcome. And the third one is Matthias Krischke. He is the managing partner at the Novitas Versicherungsmakler from Germany. Hi, Matthias. Are you there? Can you hear us? We can't hear you, or I can't hear you. Okay, we had some problems with the connection.
Can you hear me now?
Ah, yes. Perfect.
Okay, sorry for that. So we had some problems before, so I have to go by a mobile phone, so a little bit difficult.
Okay, but you are here, so great to have you here. So,
yeah.
Matthias
great to see you
Novitas. Thanks. Matthias founded Novitas in 2002 after having worked in the insurance business for 15 years and being connected to the music industry for more than 10 years. Being specialized in liability business, he came to event cancellation insurances in the 90s. He was employed by major worldwide acting brokers and was part of a team that insured the Salt Lake City Winter Olympics and all the following Olympics, including Beijing. So welcome, guys. Thank you for being here, and special thanks to Martin and Matthias for joining us and help us to understand the event insurance business and to understand the policies in the future. So I'd like to add the fact that there's been a few reports in the media about disputed claims, and they have nothing to do with Miller Insurance or Novitas, so we'd like to keep that topic out of here. And yes, let's start with the panel with a short overview. As Ronnie did it before, we had an overview all across the globe. So I'd like to ask our panelists the same thing. Matthias, how is the situation in Germany? Are you still in a lockdown? And what are the rules about event bans in your country?
I think at the moment because we are a federal country, so it differs a little bit from each and every federal country we have in Germany. But as a matter of fact, we are still in a kind of lockdown. The bars are opening now, but I think there's no chance to have some live concerts within the next few months. So that differs a little bit between all the federal countries. Perhaps some might open late summer, the others are directly closed till the end of October. So it's really different in each of our countries. For example, in Berlin, we will have a concert lockdown for bigger concerts till the end of October. Nobody knows exactly what will happen. So that's a kind of insecurity all over the insurance, all over the entertainment market, I think. So we have to wait and see what will happen.
Okay, thank you. Martin, how is the situation in the UK?
Really, we're still in lockdown. The situation was eased a little bit, but not as far as the entertainment industry goes. Last weekend, the government said that we could start to go out more than 1 hour a day and meet one other person from another household. But there's still no bars, restaurants, certainly no sign of live events happening. Obviously, I think a lot of people know with the football situation, that's starting perhaps to open up. That comes with its own problems. And some other sports events, but really nothing on the live entertainment industry is going to happen here. Certainly for the summer, I think the entire summer's cancelled already. And we're seeing now that clients that have moved from maybe March, April, rescheduled for September, October, maybe November, I think they're all starting to reschedule again for 2021, or cancel altogether. So really there's nothing much happening here and won't be for a few weeks.
Okay. Michael, is there something going on in the nighttime sector? Are there bars, restaurants, etc., open theaters or whatever? I think there are different rules.
Well, similar rules. I mean, different sort of. Just to reinstate what Martin's saying, we are on lockdown in the UK in particular. They are aiming to try and open some hospitality sector businesses from the 4th of July. We're still waiting for some specifics for the government towards the end of this month. But definitely, I mean, the live sector events, people are sort of postponing or pushing back dates. Definitely hard ticket sale events are not looking until the end of next year. A lot of people from the event sector are trying to sort of engage in local, smaller events or streamed events towards the end of this year. But as you can appreciate, suggested earlier, it's the cost implications that are sort of making people shy away. But in terms of nighttime economy, I mean, the biggest issue that we have at the moment is the proposal for social distancing within nightclubs and some of the later night venues where social integration is key, is turning people off. And there's the operational viability as well as the financial viability that needs to be taken into account for those businesses.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, before we start the discussion about the current situation, let's get back and get a brief overview about event cancellations and non-appearance insurances in the live entertainment industry. Michael, you're the CEO of your association, so how many of your association members are insured and what do they usually insure?
I mean, pretty much everyone. I mean, it's everyone in the UK in terms of our members are insured one way or another. It's the type of insurance they decide to take out. So obviously, employment and public liability is a necessity to operate within our environment. But the business interruption insurance is where the focus has been, or cancellation. I mean, definitely for the nighttime economy at the moment, there's probably only about 10-15% of businesses that have actually got responsive policies that work within the pandemic situation. The rest of the policies, just whether it be down to notifiable disease register or the fact that the pandemic emanated from the site itself, has excluded them from being able to claim. So at the moment, I'm pretty much in the reins of chasing after the insurers where there is a potential for there to be responsiveness. And a lot of this now is legal argument over ambiguous wording and how it's interpreted legally. So, and there are many companies that are in that boat, and I think everyone just wants closure on it so they can understand which way it's going to go, because the financial pressure as time goes on is mounting.
Okay, is there any difference between the sectors you're working in? Is there something?
Yeah, I mean, the live sector as a whole, the event sector, I think they're, unless you've got an extended insurance sort of provision, are just settled with the fact that a lot of them are just not covered. The sort of bricks and mortar side, pubs, clubs, restaurants, nighttime economy side, there is a sort of dispute going on at the moment, which is being taken up by the regulator for insurers and called the Financial Conduct Authority. And what's happening is, because there's been so much publicity around some insurers which the legal fraternity in the UK feel should respond, the FCA has had to step in so that they can get a ruling, an expedited ruling, to ensure that, you know, we get a result at the end of it and everyone knows where they are, both insurer and claimant. So that's in the process at the moment. It's looking to go to court around July, but we're involved in that FCA sort of evidence giving, and there's quite a lot of, I think there's about 20 insurers that are involved in that as well, which is due to be released this week.
Okay, thank you. Martin, you are part of a company and you're a broker. What's the difference? Tell us the difference between a broker and an insurance. What's your role? So I think that's a major thing we need to understand before we start and continue with the panel.
Yeah, it's really just to clarify that Miller, and I think the same with Novitas as well, we are just brokers. There's a difference between a broker who acts very much for the client, goes off and basically finds the best deal, brokers the best deal that they can get from the insurers. The insurers are the one that take the risk. They're the one that pretty much dictate the terms. Obviously, we negotiate as much as we can, but they set the terms, the policy conditions, and ultimately it's their money, they're paying the claims. So as a broker, we're not at any financial risk. We just take the premium. We earn a commission from that premium from the insurers, but our client is who we act for. And I'm pretty sure Novitas are in the same situation. So it's not our money and it's not our terms. So just worth clarifying that if anybody's thinking it's why you're not paying a claim, it's why is the insurer not paying.
Okay.
That's the only fine thing in the game. So we are not the ones to pay, but we are the ones to perhaps to be blamed if something is not working in the way it's supposed to be. So at the end of the, due to the German law situation, we are acting on behalf of the client. We are not the enemy of the insurers, but we are on the side of the client, and we have to work for them, and we have to perhaps to find out where we can find the best cover also for pandemics. As a matter of fact, for the last, as I worked in the insurance business, we talked about pandemics, but we don't have the feeling that it will come to a situation we are in now. So that's a real, for me, and the end of my working life. So it's a real horror at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I just wanted to add that we all, in this business, we all know we always blame the agent.
But we're the brokers, so we're a little bit lucky. So
let's see. Okay, Matthias, said you are blamed. So what are the...
No, we are not blamed. But we are at the moment. We are acting on behalf of the clients. What Martin said before. So we have to look at the moment. We have to find out where we have cover. We have to look at how the cover is designed. How huge is the loss, perhaps? How we have to deal with what is about postponement of the concepts into 2020-21. Is the cover still valid for next year? So we have a lot of things to do, but we are not earning money in the moment. So that's our problem at the moment. There's a lot of things to do, and many topics raised now, but we are in a situation we haven't seen before in this. Like in the way we see it in the moment. So that's real. We have to work on that because there's so many questions raised. What will happen into the future, and we don't know. I don't know. Perhaps Martin has the answer, but I don't have no real answer for into the future.
Are these questions the clients are asking you? The questions you mentioned right now, are these the typical things you are replying every day to it?
Yeah, I always tell them that I don't know. We have
Martin, what's your answer?
Yes, because I think Martin has the same feeling. So we worked in this business for 30 years or longer, and we don't. And if I look at my younger employees in the moment, I tell them they are in the same situation as I am, because we have to check out what will happen into the future. We have experiences, but sometimes experience doesn't help. And I'm in the situation right now that I have the feeling that my experience doesn't help so much for future answers.
Okay, Martin, what's your opinion about it?
Well, I think the other thing I was going to add was that the insurance companies that we've used over my career, 45 years in this, the insurers generally want to pay claims. When it's been specialized in the music and the entertainment industry, they recognize that the shop window for any insurance company and therefore any broker is paying claims. And if they just simply started haggling or kicking out claims everywhere, they'd have no business. So over the years, we've always worked with insurers that are very keen to work as best a settlement as they can. Problem with this situation with coronavirus, of course, it's never happened in anyone's lifetime. It's probably never happened in the same situation ever. And they have to, the insurance companies, it's their big bosses who are looking at it as an overall global situation on behalf of their whole underwriting. They can't just say, right, well, we'll pay festivals or we'll pay nightclubs or whatever, because it's setting a precedent for, you know, unbelievable amounts of losses. Lloyd's issued a statement last week saying that the potential loss so far is $4.3 billion, which is an awful lot of money. That's just for Lloyd's of London. That's not the global insurance, which I think they're assessing well in excess of $100 billion worldwide. The other point probably to kind of make, if it's not too early on this, is that the reason that communicable disease quite often was not insured, and again, the Association of Independent Festivals over here last week issued a report saying that 98.5% of their festival association clients did not have pandemic insurance. And the reason it wasn't offered is because there is no sort of cap, no limit for insurers to know what they're at risk for at any one time. So it's, and certainly that's worth bearing in mind going forward. It's a little bit like a terrorist situation, but even terrorism is kind of limited to one city or one country. And if they simply allowed pandemic insurance or communicable disease insurance on a global basis, they would have gone out of business in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, because they have no finite cap on what they're insuring for every sector of the business, not just the music industry.
Okay, let's get back to basics. So is there, I just remember that there was a talk at the Live Music Conference in London in March about insurances when the Corona thing started. Is there any insurance, a pandemic insurance? Does it exist?
Well, as of the end of January this year, certainly in the UK, all insurers, and I'm pretty sure worldwide, all insurers just excluded anything to do with coronavirus, COVID-19, or similar pandemics. And that really will be the way for the foreseeable future. Is that someone used it in another term, but the house is on fire, you know, and they're not going to suddenly take insurance out when the house is on fire. And that's going to continue for probably a few more years. Going back several years when the volcanic ash happened, which did affect a lot of the worldwide tourism as well. Insurers excluded volcanic ash for a couple of years after that until they can assess the situation. So it is certainly not covered here. Whether in 6 or 9 months' time or a year's time for certain territories, they may offer it at a price. Whether that price is affordable, who knows? And the biggest problem, I think, for the music industry is that how can they plan going forward, not knowing they're not going to have insurance for it? And we're very, as brokers, we're very aware of that. And it's a very difficult position.
Okay.
And actually, not just cancellation insurance, sorry, that's also on liability insurance. You know, I think until governments come in and say event organisers are not going to be held liable in law, and certainly, you know, with Michael's clients as well, that if the restaurants, bars, clubs and everything else, then until the governments say they can't be held liable for anyone supposedly catching a virus or a virus emanating from that venue, it's going to be very difficult for promoters and event organisers and venues to go ahead, particularly in America. I know they're very, very aware of it over there. Okay. I'll be quiet now.
Don't worry. Matthias, is there any difference between
no. As I think
Germany, or is it the same?
I completely agree to what Martin just told us, because the insurance, we have a little slightly different market in Germany, but the major players are more or less all the same. So we all talk to he's talking to the London guys. I too talk to the Munich guys, but it's always more or less the same market. So the German law situation is slightly different because the German insurance law is slightly different from what is in the UK. But the situation to find an insurer will be the same as Martin as all the global part might be. There might be some, like what we had after with the terrorist risk. So we had high premiums. That was uninsurable. Then it was insurable for high premiums. Then the premium rates went down later. So in the moment, for example, we are able to insure terroristic risks for rather small money. But nobody knows what will happen in the future when we have another terroristic risk. We have still risk, but the pandemics, I think I have the same position like Martin has. will be uninsurable for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Still, the insurers forget a little bit the huge losses they have in the moment.
Okay. Michael, what are, yeah.
Sorry, I mean, I know we're sort of, and I agree with Martin as well. I mean, there is a massive challenge operationally. There is big concern with regard to things like employment liability. More for that. I mean, tracking in terms of public liability is a little bit tougher, but it's still an exposure. How that's going to sort of roll out is going to be quite interesting. Quite rightly, it's not going to be insured for a decent period of time, up until the point that people understand what the risk is. I mean, our association in the UK have been pushing towards government intervention along the lines of Pool RE, which was something that was set up under terrorism. But as Martin quite rightly said, it's a very, very different sort of cup of tea. And, you know, we're talking about a broader, wider sort of financial exposure across sectors. So there is going to take some thinking to potentially get to a point where people are going to be able to be insured or covered, whether you'll be a live event, a festival, or a you know, club, bar, etc. in terms of sector. So, but I know we're involved in some discussions early on with Treasury, BEIS, about how that potentially can look. So there's lots of discussion, but as quite rightly said, there are no actual answers at the moment. We're just working towards a point where we know there's exposure, but the risk is so great. It's how you cover that risk.
Okay, so what are your members usually ask you? So what can you do? What's the way you talk to the insurances, or how can you help? So is there any help?
I think initially the members that we had were quite frustrated to the fact that they're paying premiums, and you know, and Martin quite rightly said earlier, you know, it's as much a responsibility of the operator or person who's taking out the insurance as it is for the insurance company to make sure that the contract or the agreement between the two is clear. But this is such an unprecedented situation that it's very difficult for everybody. And while everyone's under financial, you know, the insurance companies are under financial constraint because they can potentially expose themselves massively, the same way that these operators and businesses are exposed massively. There needs to be some sort of meet in the middle. And that's the challenge at the moment. There's a lot of frustration, a lot of anger that people are exposed the way they are. And premiums are being paid on time, but there is no way of actually formulating a result, even for the 10, 15% that potentially on a legal base could be responsive. And I'm not saying that that's an absolute, because there are still legal arguments to take place. But the big challenge that everyone's having is, you know, obviously insurance sometimes can be a fantastic thing that will pay out at the times, quite rightly Martin saying that he works with a lot of people where they do pay out and that's their shop window. But when it doesn't go the right way, it's very easy for the insurance sector to be turned on. And definitely for the hospitality sector as a whole, it's been a massive frustration. And the PR and press around it has led some of the sort of insurance companies that are at the sort of forefront of this in terms of being responsive or the most responsive are getting a backlash in terms of PR. So the only thing that we can do is make sure that there's strong representation, and, you know, with a legal case sort of looming through the FCA, we can get some clarity and closure on all parts and everyone can move forward. Because at the moment, everyone doesn't really know where they are and how things are going to pan out. And uncertainty is a killer as time goes on for many businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, if I could just add something to that. I think generally insurance has really been used in the wrong way by an awful lot of people in the world, particularly talking of the entertainment industry. Over the years, I've been to various conferences and either spoken on them or sat and listened to people talk, and they see insurance very much as an open-ended bank, an open-ended fund of money, who should, in their minds, are responsible for everything that happens. In a slightly different way on the international meeting that I go to every year in London, And someone at one point suggested that insurers send a representative to every show to assess the risk. And it's like, wow, you mean every show worldwide? Insurers got to send a person to every single show that's to assess the risk. And I think that's genuinely the way some people just think, oh, it's the insurer's problem. Now they're seeing as it is, well, insurers can just pay every loss everywhere in the world, which of course they can't do that any more than any other time. So it's a case of people trying to understand insurance, talk to brokers particularly, look at your insurance well in advance and have an understanding of what it is you're buying. Because people will look at it now and say, well, you didn't tell me, Mr. Insurer, that we weren't covered. And the insurance company will say, well, you've had the policy, you didn't read it. So it's getting that fine balance between the two.
Sorry, Martin, just to add into that, I think, and I agree with you. I don't disagree that there are a lot of people out there that are trying to sort of drive the agenda that they should pay out. And what we will say is, I mean, my organisation is very much on the tip that we're only going after legitimate cases, have a real responsiveness. The big challenge that we have out there is, and this is one of the things that has come about, is we've had a lot of insurers that have written to businesses to renew, and they've asked over the sort of period in March to ask whether if there was a lockdown, they would be responsive. And they've written back to say that they are. So there is a lot of false selling that's going on as well, which is quite interesting. And we've got a lot of evidence of that happening with particular insurers, which is why we've taken up the plight more than anything. And I'm not saying all of them. There's some great insurers out there that do some great work, but there are ones out there that, you know, sometimes are at the tip and the sale is greater than the, than anything else. And what they're trying to do is obviously drive sales. So for us, I mean, we absolutely are only going after legitimate cases, but cases on a legal basis have a proportionate responsiveness, which gives them some opportunity in court if they're not going to respond outside of that. So that's just to clarify where we are, and not the fact that we're going for retrofitting of everybody and expecting insurance companies to pay everything out there. We just want it to be fair and relevant when we actually get, and if we can't agree between the two of us, there's only one way to do it, and that's how we're sort of moving forward.
Okay. Matthias, you mentioned it's some kind of, it's similar to the terror discussion, and I also remember some weather discussions about insurances. You mentioned that there won't be some insurances in the future, but yeah, what happened? Could you give us a background about what happened during the past? So who was the one who got the insurances? So who needs to be insured? Is it the promoter? Is it the venue? Who is it?
More or less everybody who has the feeling that there's a risk, they have to bear in mind. So, for example, looking back, just was what I mentioned before. We had discussions when the insurance industry gets a loss, they react like we are not covering that into the future. So for example, after the World Trade Center event, there had been no terror risk in the future. Every insurer said we are not signing that. After that, we started our discussions with the insurers, and it's come out that they are, well, 2 or 3 years later, they are again signing it. Then they have huge premiums for that, and after that, in the moment, we have very low premium rates for insuring, for example, terror risks. Well, the weather risk we had in the past, we had in Germany, we have many festivals canceled due to severe weather. So we had this losses, but because we got higher premiums on that, but in the moment they are getting lower because we haven't seen losses in Germany due to weather risk for the last 3 years, but before we had some. So I think the same will get in contact with that, with pandemics or we have in the moment. Because if you look at the cover, we have a norovirus, for example, in a venue. I have an idea that these special covers for special viruses might be able to insure, but we won't be able to insure pandemics into the future. Not what is worldwide, due to the fact that what Martin told, that we have to look at the risk, and they don't want to have a worldwide cover for everything. They accumulated risk they don't want to see into the future. That's my opinion to that.
Okay, Martin, do you want to add something to that?
Well, just a bit really, that generally for cancellation insurance, just to kind of explain, I don't want to get too involved in heavy insurance. I see some people are already leaving this chat. But insurers, each insurance company has a certain amount they can underwrite for any artist or any particular event. And over the last 18 months, a lot of insurers have already pulled out of cancellation insurance anyway, because of massive losses over the last probably 3, 4, 5 years. So prices are going up. Last year, there were 6 quite major insurers already put out of it. So going forward, apart from just pandemics, there's going to be a less reduced capacity of major international tours of how much can be insured at any one time. Because those insurers may already be insuring, for instance, the venue, and then you come on with the promoter, and then you come on with the artist fee. So that's going to be quite difficult. And I think a lot of the consideration made for this session is where we go going forward, which is pretty impossible for everybody at this stage. And artist contracts, which is something else I've been banging on about for several years, certainly since volcanic ash made everybody look at contracts and who's responsible for which part of the fee or the supplier's costs or whatever else. Another area that I did an article for IQ magazine a while back is national mourning is going to come up in the UK. Sadly, fact of life or death as it may be, it's going to come up here in the next few years. It's never happened before in a lifetime. But it is going to shut down a country for a period of time. In other countries, they have longer periods of time. So the contracts are going to become all important again in that situation, in pandemics, in illnesses and everything else. It's something that people have got to be very aware of. And the agents probably, I feel, have to be more involved. Because again, the agents, I'm not picking on them, but they can very easily say, well, I'm only sending the agent on behalf of my client, who's the artist. And the promoter will send their own version. So anyway, that's a few other points to throw in the mix.
So I think if we were listening to it, it sounds like the rates will gonna go up. So our agents and promoters will be able to pay these kind of insurances in the future. Well,
it's something they're going to have to build into their budgets much earlier than they have been in the past. I mean, looking at this year particularly, there's a lot of festivals that I work with in Europe over the summer period who never really buy their insurance until about maybe a month or 6 weeks before the festival happens, which is kind of crazy. And it's highlighted here because, of course, they didn't have insurance in place when this coronavirus situation occurred. And a lot of tours, people often think, well, we're not touring until September. I'll buy the insurance at the end of August. So it's a case of getting it in, understanding what you can have and getting it in your budget, because the prices are going to go up. They were going up anyway over the last 2 years. They are going to go up, coupled with what risk you're not going to be able to get insured for. As we said, pandemics or whatever, you're not going to be able to have insurance. So getting that in as early as you can, knowing what your risk is and what your potential premium and cost is, and get it in the budget very early. Don't do your budget, then think, oh, well, I just call the insurance broker and it's, oh, shit, now I've broken the budget. And then it's all our fault. It's all our fault then.
Matthias, do you have some questions about
nothing to add. So we're telling clients for the last 20 years to think about insurance very for a long time before the festival or the tour starts. We are in some ways we were successful in talking, but sometimes we're not. So, but as a matter of fact, for example, in the moment we have all the festivals, for example, in Germany, we had discussions starting end of last year. So we are lucky that, especially for festivals, we have a few or many of them that are covered. And as for example, if you look at a normal promoter who's doing their normal business, insurance is always, I think, number 20 they're discussing about. They're talking about bands and about venues. They're talking about stages and about techniques and everything. So and at the end of the day, they have a huge amount of costs, and then they have to buy insurance. And that's too expensive. So the time they need to decide is sometimes rather long, and especially in this year, that in Germany it were 10 days between cover or no cover. So the decisions had to be made in January or end of 2020. Everything what happened after mid of February was not covered into the future, but till these times we were able to also to cover pandemics, but nobody talked about that. They were always discussed about bad weather and about terrorists, not about epidemics or viruses. So we never heard about that.
Matthias, can I ask you a question from the US?
Yeah.
Matthias, it's Mark here from Celebrity Access. We ran an article back in March that DEAG says they had full insurance for Corona cancellations. Does that mean for every show that they had booked, for every ticket refund, that they're fully covered? Or did that change since that article came out?
I think that it changed, but I don't know the policy they have. But in the German market, we had cancellations of the cover from all our major insurers beginning with the beginning of March. So all concerts that were insured before are covered, and all after that were not covered. But it depends on the cover. It depends on the client. So it's not I can't tell about what they had in their cover. We have some covers where we have insured and some are not. But after the 1st of, let's say the 1st of March, nothing. The insurance market was locked down.
They shut it down. I got you. But everything before that they had booked, I would imagine would be covered.
There might be a good chance to have that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Matthias and Martin, one question. So we're starting now there are some reopening plans across Europe, as we've heard. And I think that there are many promoters and agents and venues asking you probably, so what to do right now? So what's your suggestion? What to do right now in this situation if there's no entrance or, yeah, what's your answer?
It's not a case of there's no insurance. There's no insurance for coronavirus. And I think that's an important thing, again, to remember without chance. Well, I am sounding like a salesman, I know, but before coronavirus happened, before January, February, no one had heard of coronavirus, and there was hundreds of reasons why people bought insurance, successfully claimed on it, possibly sometimes had a bit of a problem on it. But all those reasons are still there. It's only coronavirus that's the problem. Now, obviously, that's on everybody's mind. The same as Matthias said, a few years ago, terrorism and whatever, which God forbid may crop up again, or when the volcanic ash blows, or when the bushfires are already on fire in Australia. So all of those other reasons than coronavirus can still be insured. And you've got to look at that risk. But like I said earlier, people really need to start thinking now, if they're booking these tours for whenever it may be, end of this year, beginning of next year, well into next year, they're not going to have a chance of having coronavirus currently, as we sit here on this call, in any way, shape or form, unless the government come in with, as Michael said, a pandemic retyping situation. Yeah. And I think that's very complex and very hard to bring in, purely because of the volume that they'd have to guarantee. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit doom and gloom, I'm afraid, but anyone that called any insurer or broker around the world right now would I'm sure get the same answer.
Okay. I agree completely. Nothing to add again.
That's on point.
So apart from the fact that the Brexit will come, we are of the same opinion. Because, but as a matter of fact, all major insurers are acting all over the world in the same way. There's no chance to insure pandemics into the future. That's my opinion.
And in fact, a little bit more than that, there is, because a lot of this falls under the thing that they call communicable disease exclusion. So it's not just pandemics. There are other situations that they're looking very carefully at their conditions and their exclusions. They're checking with their lawyers, this is the insurance companies, as to how they word that in future. And we have one version sent to us, for example, that just excluded communicable disease. So we've argued the case of, you know, a common cold or flu or tonsillitis is a communicable disease. And their intention is to cover that, to insure it, but they just need to get the wording absolutely right, because like everybody in the world, in different ways, this has been a massive shock and a wake-up call of realising the implications. And when I sat at the ILMC in March, that started on a Tuesday, by the Friday evening, it was frightening that every conversation we'd had on the Tuesday and Wednesday had totally gone out the window, and different conversations were starting. And as they have been ever since, in every country, I'm sure it's changing every week.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, what about your look into the future? What's your wish? What are the suggestions for your members?
The big challenge that we have at the moment is building some sort of cover or understanding, and as you say, it's very, very complex. There are a lot of discussions going on with British government on how or if it's possible to get to a point where there is a pandemic RE being able to, but as I say, it is very complex. I think the biggest message that I could probably take away from this is to make sure the insurance companies and the operators and some of the most exposed businesses that have come out of this situation, particularly the fact that hospitality sector as a whole are the last to really engage, and that's consistent across the board, is just differentiating the sectors and trying to understand a little bit more. So it's a lot of information gathering, there's a lot of surveying going on at the moment, and then when we sit down in the clear light of day, we can then start understanding more the risk, which I think is what Martin and Matthias are coming out. Until we understand the complete risk, it's very difficult to quantify whether it's reasonable or not to be able to create this pandemic RE situation. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, but the important thing is the channels are open between the sectors, which I think is probably more important than anything at the moment. And we don't sort of get to a point where, you know, one or two people who are not acting appropriately are tarnishing the sector as a whole in terms of insurance against hospitality and some of the other sectors out there. So that's probably the future sort of position I would hope for, and think we are moving in that direction. But obviously there are some big challenges and some background work that needs to be done to get to a point where we can understand whether it is workable or not.
Okay. Yeah, great, thank you. I'd like to open this round now for your questions. I have here a question from Nick. I'm giving the mic back to Ronnie again. So thank you for this panel. I'm getting now out and giving the mic to Ronnie. So yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
And I'll give it to Nick Hobbs, who has a question from Turkey.
Yeah, hi. It's more on this pandemic RE thing. So it would seem kind of clear that in a situation where, and this is not just for concerts, of course, it's the whole hospitality, entertainment, sports business,
yeah.
In a situation where you cannot insure for something that can simply destroy your business and all other businesses in the same sector, then it sort of seems logical that only government could step in and provide some level of kind of state insurance cover as an ultimate protection for businesses to keep that sector of the economy alive. The details and so forth is obviously complicated. And it would seem to me that it's not sufficient for those discussions to happen at a kind of, you know, like the people in Britain speak to the, I don't know, the CPA or somebody speaks to the British government, and then the German equivalent speaks to the German government, and so forth and so on. It needs something. I mean, unfortunately, because of Brexit, it's a bit stupid to talk about the European Union in a British context, but certainly in the European Union, one would think that there should be a discussion happening at a higher level, at a Brussels level, because it's something that affects a huge part of the overall European economy. So that would be point one. And point two would be, which is related, is that the example, which maybe is something that would particularly happen in the States, because there's a litigative culture in the States, but the idea that someone can come to an event, claim that they've been infected at the event, and then sue the organizers, or even maybe sue the venue, or sue the artists, or sue everybody that they want to sue, is kind of scary as well. And of course, that wouldn't be covered by any, that's not insurable. And that one would think could be solved quite simply by simply a general government, a law effectively, saying it's every individual's responsibility to decide for themselves where they put themselves, and the risk of catching a communicable disease is kind of, it's their responsibility and cannot be deferred to the organizers of whatever event, because obviously the consequences of that logic goes to any absurdity. You could get on a bus, you get on a bus and you catch the communicable disease. Do you sue the bus company? I mean, it seems like an absurdity. So with the complication that as an event organizer, of course, you have a responsibility to your organizers, to your clientele, for safety, which includes, of course, communicable diseases and hygiene and everything to do with that. So that would seem to be something, at least that part of it could be quite easily fixed at a governmental level by legislation, one would think. So that's the end of what I want to say right now.
Nick, can I say something from the US point of view? There's a huge push in the government over here to change the litigation laws because most of the businesses, not just concert halls, but clubs and restaurants, they're all saying, why open up if we can be sued? And our employees can sue us, our customers can sue us. So speaking to what you're saying, you're right on the mark.
And I think also it's not just the public, actually, Nick, it's the employees. If you're sending a band out on tour, and I think this has come up on another panel, Nick, I think I've heard you on, you're sending a band out on tour with however many crew it is, whether it's 5 crew or 550 crew, and the band, you've got to make sure that they are safeguarded and they couldn't sue you. And a bit the same, I guess, as restaurant employees or bar employees, that they can't come back and sue you and say, well, it's inadequate hygiene or whatever. And as somebody, one of these,
I think the other thing to take, and I mean, I sit on the task force for the government with regard to reopening for DCMS, which is Department of Culture, Music, and I can't remember but the way that this is being progressed is from a government perspective, similar to the health and safety or HSE position, it's about mitigating risk. So when you look at a risk assessment, have you done enough, or have you reasonably taken enough action to mitigate the risk? The challenge that we have out there is the government at no point, I think, are going to give us a direct understanding, and this is UK based, of exactly what we need to do. They're going to give us the risks and ask us to do everything possible to mitigate those risks. Now, there is obviously that grey area of have you done enough, or where is that disease, that virus come from? How has someone picked it up? The biggest challenge that any insurer will have is, a member of staff is probably an easier way of looking at it than a member of public who will have multiple experiences on a nighttime or an event sort of space. It's the employee that's the concern, I think, and that's been brought up at several levels. Have we actually done enough to protect them? And if you're found not to have been doing enough, then that's where the challenge is going to come in. Not just in terms of insurance, but in terms of actually from a HSE perspective. So it is a very interesting point, and still I think everyone's sort of battling with where the responsibility lies. But definitely for an events perspective, there could be a T's and C's position that sort of excludes someone potentially. I don't know where that's legally, but it's probably a discussion to have at some point.
There's
Okay.
just one point on that. There was a document which came through IQ today, which is organized by CISU or CESU or something, which is an all secure standard. And it's a follow-on to the Event Safety Alliance document last week, which are, I've looked at them, they're from a promoter point of view or an event organizer point of view, of course, completely scary. They would require you to run an event a bit like a hospital ward, you know, where the logic of them, you know, the logic which was I think said in a previous panel is that there are only two ways at the moment you can protect people. One is by social distancing and the other is by PPE. Neither of those really are workable in a mass event of any kind. They're not even workable in a bar, essentially. I mean, they're not workable at all, actually, really. You can kid yourself, but they're not workable. So the level of the requirements on the organizer of the event, both for the public and of course for their staff or visiting artists, crew or whatever, are so onerous that it doesn't at the moment look like, you know, what would happen is simply a kind of look the other way solution if anything happened, you know, because it's not actually realistic to do an event and have that level of hygiene control or whatever you want to call it.
There was a great quote from somebody on one of these conferences, again, to the most important person in a live event is going to be the bathroom.
Yeah. Well,
I would like to add something to Nick's first point, which was a good one too. In the Netherlands, the event industry has asked for government backup for insurance policies for pandemics like this. So it is a discussion, and I'm sure it's going to be a discussion at the European level as well.
do we have any others who have some questions for the insurance experts or for Michael from the Knighting Association in the UK? Anybody else who want to come in with a comment or question for that? It's definitely going to be, as you said, Martin, it will probably be the most important things ahead from now. One thing, though, I would like to ask you about, Martin, is a question I was discussing with a promoter just this week, is what do you recommend a promoter, let's say it's a venue with a capacity of 1,000 people who is promoting gigs every week, are they able, and as it looks now, are they able to have an insurance to cover their cost? I'm not talking about the fee for the artist, because let's say the artists have their own insurance, but are they able, as it looks now, or were they able before March the 1st to actually have an insurance covering their cost in case of things like this, pandemics or diseases?
Was that for myself or Matthias?
Yeah, so I think we have both of the same opinion.
Yeah.
At the moment, there won't be any chance to get a cover like this. That's
not for pandemics, that's for sure.
Okay. That's not. It was an option before, and it's not going to be an option a long time.
It was an option possibly before, but no one really was interested, as Matthias said. Nobody ever came back and said, "Can we have this insurance?" There are, I think, someone mentioned DIAG, and don't know about Live Nation. I don't get involved in their insurances, but there are rumours that some of those bigger promoters or the bigger festivals, perhaps, had bought insurance for everything, including pandemics. I know that Wimbledon tennis tournament publicly said that they bought insurance for everything, and that includes death of the Queen and all sorts of other things beyond pandemics as well that a lot of people wouldn't buy. So to an extent it was an option before, but no one ever bought it.
Okay.
No, sorry, I can't say no one ever bought it. The majority did not buy it.
the majority.
98.5% of their members didn't buy it.
Okay.
But certainly going forward, which is a more important thing, it's not going to be available. But that's for pandemics. But as I said, there's still 1,000 other reasons that would be.
Any of your clients, Matthias, who has bought a pandemic insurance before March the 1st?
So we, as a matter of fact, last year we had a discussion with some insurers about we have especially frame covers for all our clients. And at the end of last year, we started discussing to get pandemics involved in each and every cover. So, and at the end of the year, we have some emails from some major insurance companies, and they told us, oh yes, we are willing to insure pandemics without any big money to pay for that. But that opinion lasts just a month. After that, they came back and said, no, we are not willing to do that into the future. So we had that we had a proposal more or less, but that was between, I think, for the 15th of December till the 15th of January. So we missed that time period and that. But I think we have to look into the future. But into the future, we have no chance to get it back. What the chance we had last year, but we don't get it back. And if we had it, it would be all cancelled and by the insurance companies. I don't think we have contracts into the future with pandemics. That's my opinion in the moment.
And just on the way it worked before was that on this communicable disease situation, it would insure you if the artist, the insured persons themselves caught the disease. So we've had a couple of claims that have been paid on that basis where the artist or their entourage had it. But beyond that, and that's not possible now in future either.
Okay. Okay.
Can I ask?
Yeah,
can I
sure.
say something? An interesting sort of point, maybe. Bill Gates, a man of an intelligent man, they tell me. He was saying since about 2015, he was warning that there was a major risk of global epidemics, pandemics, and it seems that just about nobody, myself included, took any notice. And even the analysts at the big corporations like Live Nation, Eventeam, etc., also didn't take any notice particularly. So it's interesting that it's not completely out of nowhere, this epidemic. It's something that some very notable public figures have been warning about, and that we all ignored as a business, generally speaking, with some exceptions. Another point I'd like to, what I heard, by the way, gossip, this is totally gossip, about Live Nation and their COVID claim is that there was a lot of blurriness, but apparently their cover stretches to something like 30% of their losses. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true. I did have one question for the two brokers, if I may, which is another thing that I've heard is that the regular premium, obviously excluding the epidemics, is likely to not only increase, but increase substantially, possibly double for next year. So if you're insuring an event for the normal force majeures like weather, etc., you are likely to have to pay perhaps double the premium that you would have otherwise paid. Is that the case, or is that an exaggeration? That's my question.
Well, I can talk for the UK. I'll go in first. I think it's like the problem here, and actually I probably should have brought it up before everybody seemed to leave this forum. When insurers here, they have a contingency book of business. They class it as contingency. Now that would include cancellation insurance for the music industry that we all know, but it also covers sports events, conferences, theatres, filming, all sorts of other contingency type risks or contingency type business. And that's the book of business that has taken a massive loss. It seems a lot of sporting events, so I hear, particularly the Olympics, Wimbledon tennis, I'm not sure some of the Formula One have had the insurance, and therefore the losses are catastrophic. But the prices generally were going up anyway in the last couple of years. And they're still actually not as high as they were about 15 years ago for regular cancellation insurance. But I think, Nick, I can't answer that 100%. But they will go up, I'm sure, because insurers are going to try and recover their loss and their bank account, if you like, as well, which I know sounds quite harsh, but there's various reasons for it. And, really, we're not quoting on anything now going forward, and we won't for a few more months until the tours get back on the road to give a firm answer on that.
So we had the first discussion with some major insurers, and apart from the fact they aren't able to insure pandemics, they will rise up the premium about 30 up to 45% in the moment, what we found out now. And I think it's not only that they have many losses. I think the losses will cause that some of the insurers will quit out of the business, because the capacity that was rather high 2 or 3 years ago will get very low. So if we have big tours or big events, you will get problems in getting that and then insured with the amount you need. If you have a big tour like Rolling Stones or something like that, they won't be insurable, because the capacity in the insurance market will get on a very low level. And if there's no such capacity as normal in the market, the prices will get up. So that's my opinion. I think I suppose that the premium also for normal covers will rise. If it's 100%, as you told us, Nick, I'm not sure about that, but they will get higher.
Thank you very much, everyone. I want to thank Michael and Martin and Matthias especially for joining us in and filling us in about some details about insurance, which we really didn't take that seriously earlier on, but we do now. And then we try to see if we can get some insurance in the future. Let's see how that works. Thank you a lot to Ivana for moderating the panel. There will be some time, I guess, until we can meet in person again at some of the conferences, but we will be back in June with another panel and another theme for panels. So until then, I wish you to stay safe, and looking forward to seeing you all again. Take care, everyone. Thanks for the meeting. Thanks,
Ronnie.
Thank you. Stay alive.
Same to you guys.
Stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.